7:23 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The transformer station outside Philadelphia doesn't explode. It simply stops humming. 300 miles of transmission lines go silent in the same instant. No fire, no warning. Just the sudden, suffocating absence of the electrical heartbeat that powers 73 million lives. The lights don't flicker. They die. Inside a Cleveland apartment, a woman's laptop screen goes black mid-sentence. The cursor freezes. Her refrigerator exhales one final mechanical sigh. Outside her window, the amber glow of streetlights vanishes like someone snuffed out candles. The highway beyond becomes a river of red brake lights, then darkness. She stands at the glass, watching the city skyline dissolve into nothing. This isn't a rolling blackout. This isn't a storm-damaged line or an overloaded substation. The North American power grid, the most complex machine ever built, has flatlined across 18 states. In the control rooms, engineers stare at dead monitors. Their backup systems blink offline before anyone can react. The cascade happens faster than human comprehension. Load balancing fails. Frequency stabilizers crash. The grid doesn't collapse gradually. It shatters. And in that instant, 330 million people enter a world they've never prepared for. A world where every assumption about safety, abundance, and connection becomes a dangerous lie. The old world doesn't end with a bang. It ends with silence. The first 60 seconds are deceptive. People laugh nervously. They light candles. They assume the power will return any minute now, the way it always does. That's what power outages do. They inconvenience, then they resolve. But the cell towers aren't switching to battery backup. They're dying. The woman in Cleveland tries her phone. No signal. No data. No emergency bars. The screen glows uselessly in her hand, a rectangle of trapped light with nowhere to go. She tries calling her sister in Boston. The call doesn't fail. It simply doesn't connect. The network doesn't exist anymore. Across the affected zone, 240 million mobile devices become expensive paperweights simultaneously. Landlines fare no better. The switching stations that route voice calls require grid power. Their backup generators kick in for 90 seconds before fuel pumps, also electric, fail to deliver diesel. The dial tone dies mid-ring. Families trying to reach each other across town might as well be shouting across an ocean. Emergency services switchboards go dark. The dispatchers sit in silence, flashlights casting shadows on blank screens. Outside, the confusion metastasizes into something sharper. Drivers exit their vehicles on the highway, staring at engines that won't restart. Modern cars are computers with wheels. Fuel injection systems, ignition modules, sensor arrays, all depend on microprocessors. And when the grid collapsed, the electromagnetic surge fried circuits in a 600-mile radius. 80% of vehicles simply stop working. The remaining 20% older models with analog systems become the most valuable objects in America. Within 10 minutes, people begin walking. They don't know where they're going. They just know staying still feels wrong. The highways transform into pedestrian rivers. Thousands of people moving through darkness, guided only by moonlight and the dying glow of battery-powered phones. No one knows what happened. That's the poisonous part. The government knows. Deep inside FEMA, bunkers, and military command centers, Analysts watch the grid map turn red. They see the cascade pattern. They recognize the signature of a coordinated cyber attack targeting CADA's system, the industrial control networks that manage power distribution. But they can't tell anyone. The communication infrastructure is gone. The president stands in the Situation Room, staring at a map that shows darkness spreading like infection. 3 cabinet members argue about response protocols. But response requires communication, and communication requires power. The irony is perfect and deadly. The most powerful nation on earth is struck mute. In living rooms across the blackout zone, families gather around battery-powered radios. They scan frequencies desperately. Most stations are silent. The few still broadcasting play pre-recorded emergency messages on loop. The voices sound calm, authoritative, reassuring. This is the emergency alert system. Remain in your homes. Await further instructions. But there are no further instructions coming. The people giving orders can't reach the people who would execute them. The information gap becomes a chasm. Rumors fill the void. Someone says it's a solar flare. Someone else heard it's a terrorist attack. A third person swears China launched an EMP. None of them are completely wrong. None are completely right. The truth is simpler and more terrifying. The grid wasn't attacked by missiles or physics. It was killed by code. Lines of malicious software aimed into industrial control systems months ago, waiting for activation. When the signal came, thousands of substations and transformers received simultaneous shutdown commands. The grid didn't fail. It was murdered. And the people who did it made sure it couldn't be resurrected quickly. The restoration protocols are corrupted. The backup systems are compromised. Even if engineers could communicate, they couldn't coordinate. Every safety measure has become a trap. Restoring power isn't a matter of flipping breakers. It requires rebuilding trust in systems that can't be trusted. By hour 2, the denial phase ends. People begin to understand this isn't temporary. The woman in Cleveland packs a bag. She doesn't know why yet. Instinct tells her to prepare for movement. She fills water bottles from the tap while pressure still exists. She grabs canned food, matches, a knife. Her hands move automatically while her mind struggles to accept the new reality. Outside, her neighbors are doing the same thing, or they're sitting paralyzed, waiting for someone to fix this. The dividing line between survivors and casualties is being drawn in these early hours, not by violence or resources, by psychological acceptance. Some people adapt immediately. Others wait for rescue that isn't coming. Hour 4. The grocery stores become battlegrounds. Most remain locked, their automatic doors frozen shut, their registers dead. But some managers arrive with keys and flashlights. They see the crowd gathering outside. They make a choice. Some open the doors and try to maintain order. Others stay locked inside, knowing what's coming. The ones who open are overwhelmed in minutes. It starts orderly. People promise to pay later. They grab essentials, water, canned goods, batteries, but the shelves empty fast. And when the food disappears, the civility follows. No police respond to the silent alarms. No sirens approach. The store managers stand helpless as crowds push deeper inside, taking everything. Not stealing, surviving. The distinction matters to exactly no one. Within 6 hours, every accessible store in the blackout zone is stripped bare. The people who hesitated, who waited to see if things would normalize, find nothing left. The early panic shoppers cleared the shelves. Now those who waited face a terrible equation. No food at stores, no way to get more, and 300 million people in the same situation. The water crisis begins even faster. Municipal water systems depend on electric pumps to maintain pressure. Without power, the pressure drops within hours. Taps run slower, then trickle, then stop. People who didn't fill containers immediately now have nothing. The toilets stop flushing. Sewage backs up. The invisible infrastructure of sanitation, so reliable it's forgotten, collapses. By hour 8, the smell begins. Rotting food from powerless refrigerators, backed up sewage, garbage accumulating with no collection services. The cities start to reek. Hospitals transition to disaster protocol. Emergency generators roar to life, burning through diesel reserves calculated for brief outages. The administrators do the math. 72 hours of fuel at full capacity. Maybe 96 if they ration. Then the machines stop. The ventilators, the dialysis equipment, the surgical lights. Triage takes on a new meaning. Doctors decide who gets the remaining power. Trauma victims or chronic patients, children or elderly. The equations of who deserves life become brutally simple. People on home oxygen machines feel their supplies depleting. Diabetics watch insulin warm in powerless refrigerators, knowing it's becoming useless. Those dependent on daily medications realize pharmacies can't open, can't process prescriptions, can't access their databases. The death toll starts climbing, not from violence, but from the sudden absence of medical intervention. Hour 12. The violence escalates. It begins with desperate parents. A father with hungry children breaks a window. He takes food. Someone tries to stop him. Fists fly, then something worse. The first gunshot echoes through a Cleveland suburb around midnight. No one knows who fired or why, but the sound travels through darkness like a signal. Permission granted. The rules have changed. Home invasions begin. Not organized crime, just desperate people targeting houses that look stocked. The elderly become victims, single parents, anyone perceived as weak or alone. Neighborhood watch groups form spontaneously. Some are genuine mutual protection. Others are armed gangs deciding to take what they need from those who can't defend it. The social contract dissolves street by street. Police departments, though still functional, shift to military posture. They abandon property crime response. They protect critical infrastructure, water treatment plants, hospitals, government buildings. Everything else becomes the Wild West. Jails and prisons face impossible situations. Electronic locks freeze. Without power, the facilities become unmanageable. Some wardens release non-violent offenders. Others lock everything down and pray. A few prisons simply empty as guards abandon posts and inmates force their way out. Thousands of prisoners rejoin a society that has no ability to track or manage them. Hour 18. The migration begins. Cities become unlivable. No water, no food, no sanitation. No safety. People pack what they can carry and start walking toward rural areas. They don't have plans. They have desperation. Highways become trails of refugees, families with young children, elderly being helped by neighbors, the sick and injured struggling to keep pace. Some rural communities set up roadblocks. They've seen the crowds coming. They know their resources can't support thousands of newcomers. Armed residents turn back refugees at gunpoint. Other towns try to help. They set up shelters in churches and schools, but the numbers overwhelm immediately. A town of 2,000 can't absorb 10,000 refugees. The math doesn't work. Fights break out. Resources deplete. The helpers become victims of their own compassion. The woman from Cleveland walks south with a group of neighbors. They avoid the highways, stick to back roads. Someone has a working car, a 1985 pickup truck with no computer chips. They take turns riding in the bed, rationing the precious gasoline in its tank. They don't talk much. What is there to say? The world they knew is gone. The world ahead is unknown. Hour 24. The first day ends not with resolution, but with grim acceptance. The sun rises on a transformed landscape. Smoke rises from multiple fires, some accidental, some defensive. Bodies lie where they fell during night violence. No ambulances arrive. No coroners collect them. The death toll is impossible to calculate. Emergency services estimate 50,000 in the first 24 hours. Heart attacks from stress, diabetic shock, violence, accidents in total darkness, medication withdrawal, heat stroke in southern regions, hypothermia in the north. And this is just the beginning. The barter economy emerges overnight. Cash becomes worthless, there's nothing to buy, and no one accepts it. Credit cards are plastic garbage. The entire financial system is a memory. Value resets to basics. A can of beans for a bottle of clean water. Antibiotics for a ride to the next county. Information for food. People with practical skills become wealthy. A nurse trades medical care for shelter. A mechanic fixes the few working vehicles in exchange for fuel. A farmer with a well and hand pump becomes the richest person in the county. Those whose value came from the digital world, programmers, traders, marketers, have nothing to offer. Their expertise is worthless without electricity. The psychological toll manifests in different ways. Some people cling to normalcy, trying to maintain routines that no longer make sense. They go to work at buildings without power. They wait for news on dead televisions. Others snap completely. The cognitive dissonance is too great. Modern life disappears in hours. The human mind wasn't built for such rapid collapse. Hour 36. The infrastructure failures cascade deeper. Nuclear power plants, which shut down automatically when the grid failed, face a terrifying problem. The cooling pools containing spent fuel rods require constant water circulation. Without electricity, the pumps stop, the water heats. If it boils off, the fuel rods are exposed. Engineers work frantically with emergency diesel generators, but they're fighting a losing battle. The generators aren't designed for indefinite operation. Parts fail. Fuel runs out. The first containment alarm sounds at a Pennsylvania reactor. The cooling pool temperature is rising. The technical staff debates evacuation protocols, but evacuation to where? The entire region is in crisis. Chemical plants face similar nightmares. Safety systems require power, pressure relief valves, temperature controls. Without them, volatile chemicals cook in their tanks. Some plants vent toxins into the air rather than risk explosions. Others just pray. The woman from Cleveland's group reaches a small town in Ohio. Population 800. They hope for refuge. Instead, they find a community already stretched beyond capacity. 3,000 refugees arrived before them. The mayor, a corn farmer named Richard, stands on the church steps. He's exhausted. He explains the reality. The town well can't support this many people. The grain silos were already distributed. There's nothing left. He offers them water for the road and advice. Keep moving west. Avoid cities. Find a place before winter comes. They fill their bottles and keep walking. Hour 48. The second night falls. The death toll climbs above 200,000. Violence, dehydration, medical emergencies, accidents. The curve is accelerating. Hospitals are shutting down. The generator fuel is gone. The staff faces impossible choices. Some stay with their patients, providing comfort as the machines go silent. Others flee to save themselves and their families. The last dialysis patient disconnects knowing there won't be another treatment. The ventilator dependents suffocate when the power finally dies. Surgeons in the middle of operations watch lights dim and decide whether to continue in darkness. The healthcare system doesn't collapse gradually. It stops. In military command centers, generals discuss the unthinkable. Martial law is declared but unenforceable. How do you impose order without communication or transportation? Troops can't deploy without fuel. Orders can't be transmitted without networks. The military focuses on protecting its own installations. Bases become fortified islands in a sea of chaos. They turn away refugees. They must maintain combat readiness for when, if the situation stabilizes. The president records a message meant for broadcast whenever communications are restored. The words are meant to inspire, to reassure, to unite. But as the camera rolls, everyone in the room understands the truth. The United States government no longer governs, it observes. Hour 60. Communities begin to solidify. Some neighborhoods form defensive perimeters. They share resources, rotate guard duty, enforce rules. These micro-societies have better survival rates. Cooperation multiplies individual capability. Other areas remain anarchic. Warlords emerge, men with weapons and the willingness to use them. They take what they want. They establish dominance through violence. The woman from Cleveland's group encounters both. They're robbed by armed men on motorcycles, a gang that's claimed a 20-mile stretch of highway. Everything taken except the clothes they wear. Later, they find a farming community that accepts them. There's work to do: manual labor, harvest help, defense. In exchange, they get food and shelter. It's not paradise. It's survival. The transition from citizen to serf happens in less than 3 days. Hour 72. The third day ends. The death toll surpasses 500,000. The number will climb much higher in the coming weeks. Starvation takes time. Disease incubates. Violence spreads. But the trajectory is clear. The United States has fractured into thousands of isolated communities. Some will survive, many won't. The factors determining survival are simple and brutal. Access to water, food production capability, defensible geography, community cohesion. Modern life depended on systems so complex that no one fully understood them. The grid powered everything. Without it, everything stops. The cities are graveyards, millions trapped without water or escape. The rural areas struggle under refugee pressure. The suburbs become battlegrounds. No one is restoring power. The attack was too comprehensive, the systems too corrupted, the expertise too scattered. Restoration would require coordination across thousands of sites, millions of components, and a functional supply chain. None of those things exist anymore.